There's an enormous amount of skill involved in creating a good idea. And sometimes a good idea and a good print are like ships that don't meet in the night, and it's like, and sometimes you'll get it right. And it's, does it have to be a beautifully printed thing to be a good idea? You look at Andy Warhol's stuff. I absolutely love his stuff. Loose as fuck.
Squeegee Podcast Season 2. This podcast is sponsored by Blind Maggot, Magna Colours, M&R, Target Transfers, and Adobe Creative Suite.
Yeah. My name is David Buonaguidi, A.K.A. Real Hackney Dave. I'm not actually from Hackney. I'm from London, but I've only live in Hackney. I work in Hackney. And I'm a printmaker, screen printer artist. I don't quite know what the correct term is. And I work in this studio that you're probably familiar with. And I've only been doing it since 2020 full time. Before that, I worked in advertising for a long time, like 35 years as a creative. But I just found it all a little bit overwhelming after that long. It just became such a shit business to be part of. I just couldn't do it anymore. Unfortunately, found a very good and fun way out, which was doing what I do now.
Yeah. I, off the back of watching some of your videos, I'm like quite aware of like your journey up to this point of being in like quite a corporate world, and then you just kind of had a bit of an epiphany and you thought, let's just do what makes me happy. And I really like that, the way you describe like how you came to this, like how you got into screen printing.
It's a lot more romantic than probably the reality of it. I mean, I joined advertising as a 20-year-old back in the 80s, and it was a very creative business. You didn't have any data. There was no information. Clients would want to sell a product and they'd go to an ad agency, and then the ad agency would do what they wanted most of the time and then hope that it would work. And so there was a lot more leeway to be creative and to try and do something that was mold breaking. There was also the thing of, in those days, everybody understood the value of doing something that was different. Whereas now, and the longer I stayed in there, the more mechanical it became, the more it became about filling in blanks and being told what to do most of the time. And because there was still quite a lot of money to be spent by clients and lots of money to be made by agencies, all the costs sort of came down, and suddenly there was a lot of trepidation and fear from everybody about, don't do anything that pisses off the client, don't do anything that challenges them in any way. And then suddenly all the power went back into the client's hands. Fair enough, they're paying for everything, but there is also value in what, when you get an architect in to design your house and you've got the money to do it nicely, listen, they might have some really good ideas. Problem is now it's like you get an architect in, you tell him what the budget is, you tell him how quickly you want it done, you tell him what materials you want to use and what value everything has, and then all of a sudden there's no scope for anything interesting, and you end up with a fucking house that looks like the inside of a Holiday Inn, and that's kind of the way the business has gone. So when I had my moment, it was I call it an epiphany, but it was, a lot of people would probably call it a midlife crisis. I mean, I just got to the stage where I was 50, living in London, fortunately being in a first world town like London, in a first world nation like the UK, having all these incredible choices. I could choose what I did, what I ate, where I live, everything. I had these incredible choices that millions of people, billions of people around the world don't have. And I was still miserable. And I just thought it's pathetic. And a lot of it was self-induced. I've made a choice to marry the woman I married who hated my guts. I've made a choice to employ loads of people at the office and bring in partners, and all of whom I hated. I made a choice to do a deal with venture capital that fucking destroyed the company I'd set up. And so I felt ashamed, horribly. I felt ashamed about a lot of the decisions I made. And I think it was because I was never fully respectful of who I was. I think this is one of the issues, is that the analogy I use, those things they used to do a few years ago, but they're the faces of meth, where they show.
I like your analogies, by the way. I've got familiar with a few of them. Go on, I want to know what this is.
The faces of meth one, where they show 12 or 10 pictures of a woman who's been arrested since 1989 to 1999 and on meth charges. And the first picture, she looked all right. And then the last picture, she looks absolutely awful, like she's about to die. And it's just a gradual decline. And what's interesting is when you look at it picture by picture, you don't really notice the decline. It's not so obvious. Whereas when you look at it from 1 year to 10 years, you go, for fuck's sake, what happened? And in a way, I think that's what happens to us as humans in business, is that we just become acclimatized, we survive, we get through it, we learn to deal with it, and you suck up the pain and you deal with it. And I don't know, I just looked at the picture I was at year 10 and I just thought it's fucking not good enough. And then I just thought, Christ, I'm working all the hours every weekend. My marriage is fucked. I hate everything I'm doing at work. And I just suddenly thought, feel like I'm standing in a burning building. And it's like, what do? You have two choices. You either stand and burn, or you jump out the window. And so it was more of a survival thing, not some romantic, I've made so much money in advertising, I could afford to go off. I hadn't made any money in advertising. I lost it all. And so a lot of it was, what can I do that's going to make the last 20 years of my life fucking as much fun as possible? Because I've been suffering like a motherfucker for the last 35. Yeah. There's more to life than just doing what you're told and making money for some other fucker. You can take control of the disco a little bit yourself and try and make the most of it. And it's not about playing, being dangerous and not playing safe, but a lot of it is about ultimately what brings you fulfillment. That's the only purpose of being on this fucking big spinning ball with all the shit that we're going through now, like, recessions, depressions, war, horrendous fucking climate change. It's just the hardest time. So fucking hell, make sure you're doing something that at least makes you feel good,
Yeah. No,
and that's the realization that I had. And like I said, it was catastrophic. I mean, I wouldn't recommend going through a divorce. I lost all my stuff in my business when I walked out, and then whatever was left, my ex-wife took. So it's been absolutely catastrophic, but I'm through the tunnel now. And I feel like, I've got my motorbike, my house, my truck, my job, and my balls. And that's pretty much all I need. It's about as good as it can be.
I can't, I'm really relating to loads of the stuff you're saying. And it's like, there are certain parts that you can even build these little prisons for yourself.
Yeah.
And you can allow other people to dictate what you're working on.
Totally.
And then you kind of just get sucked into that, and then you're known for doing that. And then you just kind of stay there.
Yeah.
Do you think like COVID just as like a way of pausing the whole country? Do you think it woke a lot of people up and shook them and went, reassess your life? Absolutely.
I think COVID was one of the best things that could have happened. I mean, it's horrendous to say that. I think it's no different from, the World War that your grandparents or my parents would have gone through, which was, catastrophic on a ground level, but it created lots of very positive change, because you need to have that. It's almost like a butterfly or a lizard shedding its skin. I think we need to do that. And to look at the world we were in 4 years ago is incredible. We were boom. Everything was on tick. There wasn't like, don't pay now, pay later. It was just easy. We were all making money that we weren't making. We could all travel away, travel around, do lots of things, eat out all the time. And then suddenly when COVID came along, I think it created a very interesting opportunity for us to look at ourselves a little bit more and think, right, well, I don't have to work in a cool part of London anymore. Because if you said to people, right, there are the options, you can work in Slough or you can work in a cool part of London, everyone would go, yeah, cool part of London, I want to work in Bethnal Green. And then you go, well, if you work in Bethnal Green, you're going to have to live in Mile End. And Mile End is really cool, and that means it's expensive. So you go, yeah, cool, I'll live in Mile End. And then all of a sudden, your rent dictates that. So you're earning fucking $3,000 a month or whatever it is, and the outgoings are $2,999. So then you go, well, I'm cool, so I have to do cool things as well. And that means going on cool holidays and doing cool shit, and that costs me money. So where do I get the money from? Oh, now I have to be a bitch at work or be an arsehole at work to earn more money. And so everything,
someone else's bitch or an arsehole. Yeah.
And then it just becomes this weird thing where you, just because you want to live or work in a cool part of town doing a cool thing, it's like you have to be, you become something else. And I'm just as guilty. I fell for all that bullshit as well. And I think what happened with COVID was suddenly it's like, well, it doesn't matter. If you wherever you want to live, if you're from Bolton and you want to go back to Bolton because you like it there, as long as you've got internet access, you can pretend you're in London. You can do whatever you want. And the whole idea of working in central London is the most alien thing I can ever imagine. And also, why would you want to work in a big office full of farting people with aircon? You just go, God, I really enjoyed, my time being at home, being able to sit in my little yard, not a garden, but my little front yard, which is about the size of a kitchen table. But I really enjoyed it because it gave me some sense of clarity and control again, that I could sit there and go, I've got to say, I was shitting it. When I went full time in January 2020 thinking, oh, matching numbers, 2020 vision, it's going to be amazing. And then, you know, I got the virus in March and was sick for 7 weeks. And I'm thinking, fucking, what have I done? I've decided to be an artist when the apocalypse has hit and people are sitting there fighting over bog paper and hoarding food. How is art going to be an important thing? But it was a real opener for me, because I just thought, well, you just knuckle down, get on with it, and make the best of a shit moment. And it's been remarkable. And I've, you know, having all the experience that I've got, I suppose, in life and in business, it just means that you can kind of navigate your way through it a little bit better than somebody who hasn't got any experience, I suppose. Yeah. But I think that COVID was, or the pandemic and the end result, and the fact that we're going to be living with this for a long time, has been a real eye opener for everybody, because it makes you think about what you do, what you want to do, what makes you happy, how you spend your time, how you spend your money. And that's pretty fucking amazing, because there's not many events that could have challenged every single aspect of your life. And I think it's got to be good.
One of the turning points that you spoke about in other interviews is like going for your first like screen printing course at Print Club. And so, and then you talked about like you've learned a lot of your like skills or your technique through like talking to other printers.
Yeah.
If you were to like go and make something today, you probably have. What kind of techniques are you using? Are you just doing it very like freehand without any emulsion on the screen, like I've seen you do, or are you using like found objects a lot with your maps? Yeah, you seem like you've got quite a very eclectic
taste, and also very challenging, because you know, I've come to it very late, and so I'm playing catch up. You know, most of the people I'm working with or competing with as an artist are in their 20s and 30s, and they've got years ahead of them. Whereas I look at it, I think I've probably got 15 years of good making before I'm stupid, before I turn mental, you know, which isn't very long. You know, what are you? How old are you? What are you?
I'm 34.
30s, right? So
you're rounding that down, Dave.
Yeah, but I can round that down, because when you're 34, that's less than 30. If you were 35, I would go, all right, you're in your 40s almost.
My mum calls me 40.
When you're in your 30s and you still look good, when you're my age, 58, that's almost, I'd say that's 65.
But do you think all your time in advertising made you be able to, like, gave you the very, very difficult skill to learn of communicating effectively, like minimalist?
That's the brilliant thing that I learned from advertising. And when somebody asked me the other day, oh, you know, do you wish you'd sort of done all of this a little bit earlier? Of course, but the knowledge that I've got in running a business, the knowledge I've got in how to roll with a punch, because in advertising, you spend all day long being annihilated by clients, consumers, your staff, everybody. It's just a fucking very toxic industry where creativity and your yearning to do something interesting is just destroyed on an hourly basis. So you don't burst into tears when you do something that's bad, or you don't burst into tears when somebody says they don't like it. You just go, all right, mate, I'll do it again. And you become very resilient if you do it for a long time. If I had to do it all over again, I would do it in exactly the same way, because I think I am a better artist for having been in advertising as long as I was. I think with the way that I like to work, you know, I remember when I first started at Print Club, and it was an epiphany. You know, I went in there and I just thought, wow, I'm studio, not boardroom. I like wearing dungarees. I like wearing no socks. I like having flip flops in the summer.
You're a no sock crew. Like, yeah. I'm not wearing any socks.
Yeah, and it's, you know, and so I like being, you know, I'm scruffy, and when I used to dress up and put nice things on with a collar, you could sit me in an empty room for a day, and I'd come out looking like I was covered in ink. It was just, I just attract dirt. And so once you accept that you're studio, it's very liberating. When you go into a studio, when I was in Print Club doing the class, I remember looking around and feeling a sense of excitement, because we were doing something new, and we were doing something analog, and we were doing something with our hands and different and sort of feral. You know, you come up with an idea, and it travels down through your body, and you put it on a piece of paper, and you walk out an hour later with something. No other business can do that. No. In advertising, it takes you a year to put anything out. And then by the time you've done it for a year, it's the biggest load of shit you've ever heard of. And you're sick to death of looking at it, because it's taken so long and cost so much money, and so many compromises along the way. Whereas if you can think about, if you find something that works and people like it, there's nothing more rewarding than making it and then meeting somebody who likes it more than you, and they're willing to give you some of their hard-earned money for it. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. And you're providing a lovely
more than you. I like that.
Yeah, most artists would like to keep everything they make for themselves. But if somebody comes along and offers you money, and because they like it more than you, sell it to them. And it's your right, and it's a great fucking job. And you should be really proud that you've got a job where people pay you to do what you love doing. It's fucking amazing. And so I suppose the eclectic nature of everything I did that I do now was driven by the role that I had to do in advertising, which was, who am I competing with? Am I as good as them? No. Am I as good as them? No. And then you sit there and go, right, if I want to compete in the top 10, I mean, one of the first things I did was go to 2 or 3 galleries and say, take me through your top 10 selling artists, and look at them and go, right, I'm not as good as the top 5, but I think I'm better than number 6. And then you sort of think, okay, how do I get better? And how do you create a niche? So if everyone else is doing that stuff, how do I do something that stands out a little bit more and be known for something? Because again, that's a simplest trick that you play in advertising, which is, how do you stand out on the high street? How do you stand out in an ad break when your ad comes on TV? How do you stand out more than anybody else? How do you make it funnier, louder, noisier, better, more creative, whatever, more engaging, whatever it is? So you're always looking for that extra little 5, 10, 25%. And I remember going into Print Club and seeing people who were brilliant printers, but their ideas were shit. Or other galleries where they make these amazing pieces.
Or the other way around.
Great ideas in their shit printer.
They couldn't print them. And so I thought I would have better ideas than other people, but I was a bad printer. So I worked out how to become a better printer, which is something anybody can learn. And then sort of discovered what I call my universe. It's the wanky phrase for it, but it's like, what are the things I'm good at? Do more of them. So when you see a wall full of 100 pieces of work, how can I make sure that people, when they see mine, that they go, it's mine? The same way that when you walk into a gallery and you see an Andy Warhol on the wall, doesn't matter whether it's Marilyn, Elvis, a Coke bottle, or whatever it is, it's him, because there's something about the technique, there's something about that red thread of something or other that goes through every single bit of work he ever did that makes it his. And I think that's really essential for all artists, is to have something that you're comfortable with, and don't chase the money, which is what a lot of people do. Oh, someone else is doing words on maps, I know what, I'll do that as well, because then I'll make some money. And it dissipates your brand. And so I was very, very controlled about making sure that the stuff I wanted to do was what I wanted to do, and then sort of stick to it. And so that challenge thing of whether it's printing onto things I find, I mean, if you could sort of sit there and go, what are the ingredients of my pie? It would be found ephemera, whether it's interesting, items, whether it's metals or wood or maps or love letters, anything that I can print on that's already got a story to it. That's what I love about printing onto maps. You get a blank map and put it on a table. It's one of the most emotional things ever, because it doesn't matter where you're from, you will go and have a look at it. Apart from the fact it's also a beautiful thing. They're beautiful things, drawings and artworks. But there's something really emotive about a place, because that's where we sort of belong, and that's where we've been, and that's where we've done certain things. And so in a way I'm cheating, because I'm finding things that already exist, and then I'm making them just a little bit more relevant. And I find that really exciting. And then it's, if I print onto 50 maps of Cornwall that are all Bartholomew's maps, that are all technically all the same, they're all different because they've all been owned by lots of different people, and some of them have been doodled on, some of them have been stuck together. So when I print on 50, they're all completely different. And I love that thing of having stuff that's completely unique. So then when I print editions, how do I print an edition that, even though they're all the same, how do I make them all different? And I think everybody wants that. When you go out and see a pair of boots in a magazine, you go, I really like those kind of knee-length brown leather boots. But you'll know there's 20 companies that are all making them. So it's like, how do I get the ones that... So when I go out with all my mates, 7 of us aren't wearing the same boot. And it's everybody wants something that's unique, that will tap into their identity and their vibe and feel different or better. And so that's the thing that drives me with a lot of the stuff.
There was something else you said. I don't know if it was a throwaway comment, but anyway, you kind of said something like, nothing's unique anymore, and people actually don't want, like, unique. They just want reimagined things that they relate to.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've only got to look at every other form of culture, whether it's music, film, fashion. I think art is exactly the same. You know, in advertising, everybody used to be obsessed by got to do something completely original. Now, when you've got an audience of 1 million people, fucking hell, man, why be original? Because a lot of people are going to reject it. There are very, very few people who are open to anything truly original, because it means you're challenging, it means you're breaking something, you're pushing, you're rejecting something. A lot of people don't want that. So we used to do this thing, what I called the Oasis formula, which was Oasis, when they broke on, you know, are a fucking great band, but it's a little bit like the Beatles. So you can listen to it, and then your mum and dad can listen to it and goes, oh, that sounds just like Abbey Road, because that's the kind of, you know, that's the flavour they wanted. Now, it was then wrapped up in a very interesting personality of these two mad brothers from up north that kind of wrapped itself in this Britpop thing, which was an added formula. But then they kind of delivered it in a way that was very un-Beatles-like. It was like the Sex Pistols. So you'd see this angry man who was shouting, and the brothers were always at war. And so the formula we had was a little bit of something you know, a little bit of something you don't, wrapped up in a lot of personality. And I think you listen to the greatest music ever, it'll all be samples of stuff, it'll all be reimaginings. You know, the greatest director ever for me, Quentin Tarantino, every single thing he does is a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and I'll wrap it up in my personality and I'll deliver it in a different way. And it is something you know, something you don't, wrapped up in my personality. And I think it makes it very easy for people to then engage with it, because you're not asking them to fucking challenge it. You're giving them something they already know. So you're taking their hand and it makes them feel familiar. And I think it was just a really good formula for me. Like I said, it's a very personal thing, but it worked for me. And we used to, you know, you analyze the things look at the things that work really, really well and try and understand why they work really well. And then if you can replicate that formula, everything that's fucking amazing, very, very rarely the things come along. All right, Damien Hirst, when he first appeared and started doing very challenging work, he's not got an audience of 1 million people. He's only got to sell it to one person. Is a success. You know, Jake and Dinos Chapman can sit there and do little kids with cock noses and
freak me out. Those
and
two.
bumhole ears. It's all fucking horrendous. But
yeah,
if they do it and 1 billion people hate it, and one little old woman in New York loves it, they've won. They've succeeded. And so,
where is she putting that little doll that has like a dick for a nose? Like,
I know.
Like, who's got that in their house?
Yeah, I know. But it's like nobody's got that in their house because they love it. They've got that in their house because they know that it shocks. And it's like, you know, that Saatchi show that made it all, which was the shock of the new. So it's like that set all of those guys up, that they were in their intention was to sit there and shock people. Now, out of all the artists who were part of the shock of the new show, maybe 5 or 6 of them have done really, really well. The rest of them have fallen off a cliff. And so it works for some people, but it's not a formula that's going to work for everybody.
Yeah.
I think it's also the kind of, you know, you got to look at the kind of work you want to do, and I don't know, you know, how much money you've got to make, because there are some artists I know who are very wealthy. Mum and dad made loads of money. Granny and granddad made loads of money in the slave trade, and you know, it's like good for you. There's a guy I know whose dad owns half of the Isle of Mull. Good for you, mate. You know, he doesn't really have to work. He doesn't have to sit there like I do and go, fucking hell, man, I've got to earn like $3,000 this month just to cover my costs.
Yeah. Can I ask you about that though? Because you've come from like business and setting budgets and like working for clients and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like how does that differ, being like an advertiser person, to like setting your price for an edition of prints? Like, how do you even come to that figure?
Well, we had a simple formula when you know, I was paid a salary because it was my business, and I paid tax at the point of salary. So you'd PAYE. When we employed freelancers, you'd have what is called a day rate. So you'd get somebody, you go, right, I need a creative team or a back-end developer or a website guy, designer. And, you know, depending on what quality you wanted, some days I'd pay $1,000 a day for some people. You'd pay 200 a day for the lowest of the low. Now, when you sit there and go, okay, the cheapest I'd pay for somebody to come in and do a very specialist job was 200 quid a day. Now, if you're working at McDonald's, you're getting what, £10 an hour, which is shit. So you got to do a 10-hour shift or whatever it is to get 120 quid. Now, in advertising, the lowest price you're going to pay, or in design, the lowest price you're going to pay is 200. And that would be real chicken fodder. You'd get somebody that was going to come up with 100 ideas, 99 of which would be fucking not very good. So you're hoping that you would discover some new talent. And so I used to just operate like that, where I go, if my day rate, I kind of go, right, as a rough example, I go, my day rate is £1,000. If somebody said to me, Dave, how much would it cost for you to be an escort? Now, this is not a dirty escort, but I'm just saying, just walk around with me and be my escort, be my partner for the day. I'd go, it costs you £1,000 a day, or 500 a day, whatever it is you come to that you feel comfortable with. And then you sort of go, okay, how long does it take me to create a piece of work? So if I was a painter and I go, it takes me 6 days to do a painting, and you go, all right, if I'm 500 quid a day and it takes me 6 days to do it, that's £3,000. Now, straight off the bat, can I sell that painting for £3,000? Probably not. So then I work back from, okay, if I do a painting or a one-off piece, and then I do a screen print, which means I can make 50 or 100 or 500 of them, then you sort of go, okay, if I could go, instead of £3,000, if I can do 100 of them, I can charge maybe 100 quid. And if I've got 100 of them for 100 quid, that's 10 grand. And then you sort of go, okay, or what if I do 100 of them and I charge 200 quid or 300 quid, 400 quid, and then all of a sudden the numbers start making sense. One of the biggest issues I think for artists is a total fear of, is imposter syndrome, which is inherent with everybody, which is you think you're no good. And two, the impact that has on the money that you should be charging. So you think the best thing to do is charge it less and then I'd sell more. Now, I know an artist who does 6-layer screen prints. Now, if you imagine with screen printing, 6 layers is 6 screens. Now, the time, well, again, back to the cost, how I do it is, so if somebody says to me, I want to commission a map with Steve Loves Mary over a map of Portsmouth, I'll charge you 500 quid for that. Because I know that to get a clean screen, if my day rate is £1,000, I start off.
Are your screens really dirty? And you're like, shit, I'm going to.
No, but if I start with a dry screen,
I know.
I've got to put. They're all filthy. They're really good. If I start with a dry screen, I've got to put emulsion on it. I've got to print out a positive. I've got to spend time on the computer creating that positive. I've then got to go and collect that positive. I've then got to expose it. I've then got to wash it out, dry it, and then I can print with it. And then I've got to strip it and dry it. So
if it goes well as well.
Yeah, and print it. So from a dry screen to a dry screen, I know that'll take about 6 hours. And I work 12-hour days. So the way I do it is my charge out rate is £1,000 a day for escort prices. And I know that I can do 2 commissions a day for 500 quid each. So that kind of works out. I know I can do 6 commissions a day because I've got lots of screens and I can overlap them all. But the way if I was just being really plonky, dry screen to dry screen twice, 500 quid a pop. And so that gives me a price. And then I know that if you want a one-off, it's 500 quid. But if I do an edition of the same thing, so as an example, somebody said, I'd like a commission a map of the Isle of Wight with the Isle of Shite on it. And I said, yeah, I can do that. 2 colour, I'll do that for 500 quid.
Did you get in trouble for that one?
I don't know. No, people seem to like it.
Really? No one gave you any.
And this bloke lives on the Isle of Wight, so he called it the Isle of Shite, and he lives down there. But it was something where I then said to him, okay, that's a pretty generic print. I could do a load of those. So I said, if you want one, it would cost you 500. If you let me do 10, I can do it for you for 360, which is what I normally sell my 2 colour prints for. So then you can sit there and do a deal with a bloke. He got it for 360. I printed another 20, which I sold for 360, and they all sold out. So I made more than if he just said, I want exclusivity for 500 quid. It's better for him to get it cheaper, and then I make more money out of it. So it's doing those little deals as well. Obviously, if somebody comes along and says, I want Steve Loves Mary, I'm not going to be able to sell that.
Yeah.
And so you just have to be really confident about your money. But I remember bumping into an artist that the Affordable Art Fair a couple of years ago, really good artist. She does cyanotypes, called Jo de Peer. And I looked at her pictures, and she lives in the West Indies, which is nice. She does these cyanotypes. So she's just got this beautiful blue. She said, I go down to the garden, I get a leaf out of my garden, which is going to be a lot more exotic than the little yard I've got in Hackney. She puts it on the cyanotype paper, lets the sunlight expose on it for 6 hours or 8 hours, and you get this sort of shifting. So you get this beautiful kind of melding of and it's a beautiful process. And she had these incredible prints, and she did some with leaves and some with flowers and some with things like coral and interesting objects, and they looked absolutely stunning. And I said, how much are they? And she went, 300 quid. And I went, fucking hell, way too cheap. They're really special, way too cheap. They're all one-offs. You'll never be able to do a similar one. So I said, well, you just charge 900 quid. And she went, all right. She put 900 quid, and they fucking sold. They all sold.
Yeah.
And it was just the kind of thing of, I think a lot of it is, they're really easy to make, but that's irrelevant. How do you charge? It's not about time, it's about idea. That was the thing that we always struggled with in advertising, is we get paid every month by the client. Now, what if you come up with an idea in 30 seconds that transforms their business and makes them billionaires overnight? That might take you 10 seconds to come up with an idea. You can't charge for that.
Yeah.
I think with art, it's about value. When it's on the wall, how do you value that art? How much would you pay for it? How much would you pay for a beautiful object? How much would you pay for an amazing pair of jeans or a pair of shoes, a bag? You would pay you have a value in your head. And I think sometimes pitching yourself when you create art, almost come up with a number that you would pay and then double it and then see how that makes you feel.
Yeah.
Because ultimately you might only make 20 of those. So how do you make 20 people? I know 50 really rich people. So how can you get 20 people? And in a way, that's also how that's how you should build your brand, work out how to get lots more followers on Instagram, how to get more people looking at your website. And it's all about odds. You might send out a post, you might have 200 people look at it or like it. From that, you might get 10 people, if that, who would think, I know what, I'm going to go to the website. I really want that piece. I'll go to the website and look at it. And then from those 10, you might get 2 that put it in their basket, and you might get 1 that actually completes. Yeah. When I do fairs, you think I've got a stall that's 3 meters.
Do you do things like the affordable art fair and stuff?
Yeah. I do the affordable with galleries, with Jealous Gallery, and I'm doing it with a new gallery this year. I've done things with I've done the other art fair as well, which is quite good, which is you have to do it on your own as an artist. But again, you might think, God, they might have 3,000 people might be coming through every day or 5,000 people. I've got a stall this big, so I've got potentially 5,000 people walking past. 4,000 of them don't give a fuck about my work. So already you've lost you lost a fifth already. Well, I lost 4/5. So then you're like, how do I get those 1,000 people that might be remotely interested? Just look at them, or they might walk over, and then I might have to engage them. You might get 100 of those. And then from that 100, you might only make 5-6 sales a day out of 5,000 potential. Now, obviously, if you're Charming Baker or you're Jake and Dinos Chapman and you do a release, and or David Shrigley, and everybody knows when I buy it for 800 quid on Monday, by the time
seeing it as an asset, though.
Yeah, exactly. It's a different thing. You're not buying it because you like it. You're buying it because it's going to be worth more 3 days later, and you can sell it. And so there's that. That's also another reality and an ambition for a lot of artists, is how do you create added value to your work? And sometimes that's as plonky as having lots of followers on Instagram. And sometimes that's as plonky as having a really good website or working with certain galleries. And so a lot of it is perception, value, all of those intangible things that all have to come together to make. But what kind of phone have you got?
I've got an iPhone.
iPhone. But it's the same. So why would you decide on an iPhone as opposed to a Samsung or a Google Pixel? They're all effectively the same. But Apple just feels sexier, right? Just feels more creative, feels more you. And they're all the same fucking product at the end of the day, just wrapped differently and advertised differently, and the brand values in the same way that where you live, what you eat, what you listen to, what you watch, all of those things are events that have happened in your background and come to the foreground and make sense to you. And so I think you have to think like a brand. You are, as an artist, you are a brand. Why should you be more important than anybody else? During lockdown, I remember thinking, God, we'll have little, it was almost like a little circular thing that we have strapped to our waist that have lots of little lights. And it's like, you know, holidays and food and all the things that I like doing. And when it's boom time, everything's shining bright, and you go, "Oh, I know what, I'm going to go to the cinema. Let's go see that film or do this." When when the pandemic happened, all of those lights went off.
And you're left with yourself.
Yeah,
I've
sat there with clients in the past when 9/11 happened. Every fucking client we had came in and said, "We're cutting our spend." Within 2 days, cutting our spend. Now that can have a fundamental effect on any business. You look at what's happening now with rising prices on everything. It's going to affect everybody. It's going to really bite hard. And so everybody's natural instinct with clients and brands is turn the tap off. Whereas my thing to those clients was, everyone else is going to turn a tap off. You turn yours on full blast. How do I make my light brighter than everybody else's? Well, sometimes it's just by being there, doing something, talking, having more fun, doing whatever it is. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of artists struggle with, because it means you have to engage your personality. And a lot of artists don't have those, you know, they feel awkward. We all feel it. We feel cautious. We feel imposters. And so once you get that confidence and you can feel that you can,
you've had your fuck it, haven't you? I think out of anyone I've listened to, you've had your fuck it, let me just be happy now moment.
Yeah, well, I kind of feel like I've earned it. I mean, the way I looked at it is I was in prison for a long time. I was married to somebody who hated my guts. I did a job to support her that I hated with people I fucking hated. And so it was just like, I've done my time now. Now it's all about me. I'm going to be really what I call positive selfish. I'm only going to do things that make me feel good. And I've not woken up in 4 years feeling stressed. I've not gone to bed feeling anxious. I've not woken up on a Monday feeling sick about having to go into an office, and I'm not gone home on a Friday feeling relieved that I'm out of work, and then feeling sick that I've got to go home and share it with a woman who hates my guts. So it's been, like I said, it was catastrophic. Took a long time to clear, but it was a positive move, which has made my life much, much better.
Yeah. At least everyone else was having a cathartic time at the same time. So
yeah, it was, you know, ultimately all the decisions I made benefited more than just me. It benefited lots of people, and you know, my wife and my kids, and you know, they're in better spaces now because there's no fighting and there's no bickering and there's no toxic. I mean, it's just like when you're out of it, it's really weird. I mean, I'm sure you know you've been in a toxic relationship, and you sort of
not with anyone else, but I've done it to myself. Like I put myself in lots of little individual toxic situations in business and stuff.
Yeah,
like working for arseholes.
And you understand that suddenly when you sort of, at first you think it's always me, it's me. And then there's something wrong with me, and then you become gaslighted by these fuckers, and then all of a sudden, and then one day you wake up and you go, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Make a decision and you leave, and then you suddenly feel how relieved. Now that's just human nature. You know, humans are very good at surviving, and that's part of our job. And it's whether you're surviving living in a cave, having to eat animals that you hunt every day, or learning to survive by getting through the corporate world and working for wankers and dealing with arseholes and doing all that shit you don't want to do. I mean, it's the same fucking genetic thing, which is our survival instinct. And there's something really amazing that I bet for a caveman, if you suddenly said in the future you'll be living in a house with running water and gas and you won't have to catch animals, you just walk to the shop and buy them, you know, you'd be stunned. And also I think that, you know, that has an impact on how we live our lives and in what we do.
Can I talk a little bit more about like your processes again, like with the screen printing specifically, and why you've chosen that as a medium? Because I'm assuming like in digital, you did a lot of like digital prints.
Yeah.
And then you'd get the proofs back and it would all be on the computer. But like, what is it about screen printing? And like, do you do a lot of work with like choosing the papers and liking the way the ink goes on in layers, and kind of, can you talk about that like analog side of screen?
Yeah, I mean, and analog is the key word. I mean, you know, when I worked in advertising, you'd come up with hundreds of ideas, 999 of them would be destroyed. You'd get to make the worst idea out of the bunch because it was the only one that could survive the 100 lashes that everybody who's involved in the procedure and the process would apply to it. And so you end up with lift music, because it was just can't be too much of that or too much of that. So we'll just make vanilla ice cream because everybody doesn't hate vanilla ice cream. That's the way it used to work. So with the work, I'm very kind of casual. You know, I don't like overthinking stuff. I like the speed of everything. The thing that I loved about advertising was you're working on 5 or 6 different things at any one time, and they had a lifespan. You know, you'd make it sometimes, depending on how long it took to make, but you'd make something and then it was gone. You know, it was just disappeared. And I remember when I worked at Channel 4 after I left one of my agencies, even worse. You know, you'd have 2 weeks to make anything and it would be on air for 4 days and then it was gone. And so you'd make 1,000. When I worked in the previous ad agency, you'd make 300 things a year, and it was like making Fabergé eggs. You know, you're all, oh, look at the finety. Whereas when I worked at Channel 4, it was just like, fucking shit it out, man. It's like shit through a goose. And the guy that was my boss said this very interesting thing. He said, we are in a river, a fast-moving river of culture. Occasionally we'll do something where we're just throwing things over our shoulders and they'll create ripples. Most of the time they'll disappear, they'll hit the bottom they'll hit the water and disappear without a trace. Occasionally you'll do something that will create ripples. Now, the first year that I was at Channel 4, they launched Sex and the City, Queer as Folk, and Big Brother, which were the most, for me, the most fundamental shows that Channel 4 has ever run, because they were very, very niche, very, very Channel 4. No other channel in the country would have run those, but they were all massively successful because they were, I think it was when Channel 4 had evolved and become more of an adult rather than a sort of petulant teenager. And so that attitude of doing something different, challenging in a way, but also mass production. And that's the thing I loved about advertising is, you know, when you ran an ad or you did a picture, it appeared everywhere. And so screen printing felt like a very natural progression for me, which was, and it just because it happened to be the first thing that I attempted. I mean, I was thinking about doing sculpture, but I don't like that thing of spending a huge amount of time doing things. At the minute, there's a big piece there that Just Be Nice with sequins on it. Fucking hell, man, it's taken me forever.
I saw your comment. It was something like, it says just be nice, but you actually just want to fucking bite someone.
Yeah. And you know, I've done it as screen prints multiple times. I've got a pile of A4 screen prints. I've got 400 A4 screen prints that I'm going to do with glitter. So I can do the mass production side of it, but I also like doing those one-off pieces. That I've got one that's, you know, the shimmer, then there's another one made out of flowers or fake flowers. I'm also doing a big inflatable. And so I love that thing of the idea doesn't always have to exist in one place. It can be lots of different things. And interestingly, for this show, I've got 50 artists who are all doing one-off pieces as well. Some of whom will follow the rules and go, just be nice. Others who will just do whatever they want and rearrange the letters into whatever thing they want. And so there's a casualness that I really like about mass production, but ignoring all of the normal traditional rules of mass production where everything has to be perfect. How do you make something feel a little bit loose? And I think if you're confident and you're happy with that style, I'm never going to be technically a brilliant printer. I can print pretty good, but I find it exhausting because it requires so much concentration. Whereas I like trying stuff that's a little bit loose. And in a way, that attitude is what kind of drives me to sort of try those things.
Can I talk about your, like, that difference between being technical and free?
Yeah.
Because like I've done high-end artwork for artists who, like, you know, show it in galleries and sell it for a few grand.
Yeah.
And I'm the poor bastard trying to get their digital image to look like to be a screen print.
Yeah.
And then it's all about like perfectionism and registration and lining up. And I do enjoy that to a certain extent. But if I was to make the best day possible for myself, it's nothing to do with that. It's just even getting like very basic shapes on screens and seeing what happens. Yeah. That's like really like makes your heart pump and you're really excited and you're like in the zone and you're really like, but
that's because you are confident enough to sort of be cool about seeing what happens. And, you know, I look at a lot of those artists who are technically brilliant. They're like color copies when they come out. Yeah. I sort of just go, they're a little bit soulless. Whereas one of the things that I loved, I remember going to a gallery on a school trip and seeing a very thick paint. I think it was a Francis Bacon.
Oh, I love Francis Bacon.
And seeing a fingerprint in the ink, in the paint. And I remember thinking, fucking hell, that's so cool. A lot of people would have gone, oh my God, it's so dirty, there's a fingerprint there. Whereas I loved it because it felt like that was his personality. That's the vibe you got. When you see pictures of Francis Bacon's studio, it looks like a fucking inside of a caravan. You know, it's just but you sort of go, it needed to be like that because when you see his paintings, you can't imagine that being done in a beautiful white space, you know. You see the chaos of his life and the world that he lived in. his paintings absolutely reflect what he was all about. And I think that the process, you have to make that your own. You know, the fact that you're having to do very, very defined, very precise pieces for other people is soulless for you, because it's not you. So
yeah, I don't do it anymore.
You're sort of rejecting it, and you're able to just go, you know what, I just want to fucking do that, or I just want to do that, or just splat. And I think that's something that only comes from sort of confidence, but also having the ability to not be too precious. Speak to a lot of artists who go, oh, I've done that in registration shit, or the colour wasn't quite what I wanted. I said, listen, the only person who knows the colour's not right is you. When you stick it on the wall and put it in a frame and people go, that picture's great, not one of them is going to turn around and go, it would have been so much better if she'd actually got the right colour.
Oh, you do eye up people's registration though, don't you? Like, I go,
yeah.
I'm just a bit of an asshole, but I do spot it.
Yeah, I do that as well. But it's like when I print,
just for being an arse, not to like.
Of course, you know,
art, but
when you're a printer, it's like, you know, you know that there's quite a lot of skill involved in creating a really good print, but there's an enormous amount of skill involved in creating a good idea. And sometimes a good idea and a good print are like ships that don't meet in the night, you know. And it's like, and sometimes you'll get it right, and it's, you know, does it have to be a beautifully printed thing to be a good idea? You look at Andy Warhol's stuff. I absolutely love his stuff. Loose as fuck. You know, see it up close. Registration, what does that mean? He creates beautiful pieces. Now, all right, he had the benefit of his work being bought by collectors, so he could be loose because that was his style. And I think that's what I mean about find the style that suits you and then just embrace it and run with it. And, you know, if you're messy, be messy and enjoy it.
Do you put out quite... I want to ask you two questions. First of all, have you like completely cleared out, what was it, screen text, like fluorescent pink?
Yeah.
Do you just basically, you're the only person that orders that, and you just like order it in bulk?
No, I mean, I order it.
Hoard
it. I order it in bulk. I've got big pots of it. Lots of people use it, and I'm certainly not the first person to use it. The thing that's interesting is I do these things called splat prints, where I've worked with a photographer called Ben Kaufman, who had an amazing picture of this young girl and her dad. I met her because her dad had bought a print off me, and she came up with him to collect it. And I followed her on Instagram, and she's a model. She was like 15 at the time, and she was a model. And there was a picture on her Instagram that was just a brilliant shot. And I asked her if I could use it for something, and she said yes, if you give me one of the prints. And then she put me in touch with Ben, and he said he'd let me do it if I gave him one of the prints. And so I wanted to do this thing where I printed onto gesso board and then drop balloons full of my fluoro red onto it. It took me a long time to get the right thickness of ink, because sometimes it would be really runny and it would go all over the place, but it looked amazing when it hit first time. I'm currently trying to do something with a guy called Stuart Sample, who is the magician ink maker artist who created the blackest... Stuart Sample.
Oh yeah,
he's created the blackest ink ever. And what's his name? Annettte Kapoor bought all rights to it, so no one else on earth can use it. And so Stuart obviously went, yeah, fine, give me the money and you can have it. But then he created the pinkest pink. He said everyone else on earth can buy it. Everyone on earth can buy it except for Annettte Kapoor. So when you bought it said, you know, I am not Annettte Kapoor. I'm not buying it on behalf of Annettte Kapoor. This is only for me. This is where it needs to be sent. So I'm working with him at the minute to create not the color pink, because I think, you know, I don't want to own the color, although I do like the idea of being like a pink version of Eve Klein. But I want to work with him to create the perfect consistency that when I drop it from 2 floors up, it splats but doesn't run everywhere. Because I'm doing a new edition of these girl prints with a different girl now, but I want to make sure that the pink is really fucking pink. So I find that really exciting, that I can go down and create the consistency of liquid. That means I put it in a tiny water balloon and it will be perfect. And he's really excited about that because he's a paint nerd. And so we've just got this fun thing that you can do.
It's like how you've done I saw the Harley Davidson printing ages ago. Well, it seems like a while ago. Yeah. And then I never looked into who you were. So I feel bad about that now. But now I've like gone back, done my research. Now I'm linking the two. But you pulled the prints by attaching a squeegee. Do you think there's like a bit of like a you like all these kind of mechanisms, kind of like
what it is? It's
grommet machines?
Yeah, can you create a story? It's always like, why is that print? The print is anyone could have done that print. How do I own it a little bit more? How do I make it a little bit more interesting? How do I make it something that people might pass around? It's all about advertising.
Yeah.
So when I do a print that says "Stay weird, you fucking weirdo," I want people to hang it on their wall and go, "I'm a fucking weirdo, and I'm really proud to be a weirdo." But if I can create it in a way that is really stupid and pointless and weird, then it just adds a little bit more credibility to it. So the whole idea of coming in here, and we did it in here the first time, and when I bought a metal ladder, I had to drive all the way to Slough to just get a metal ladder that I could.
Why is it always in Slough? Did you live in Slough?
No, I don't know why. It's always Slough. But I had to make this ladder, and I had to cut it all apart and then put fins on the back of my motorbike and then attach a device that meant I could put a squeegee on. And then I built you can see that big red thing there, which is so I had to get all these screens and build these massive screens. I mean, it's the stupidest thing you could ever fucking try. And the annoying thing is it works perfectly. So every print I did
better than a bench.
Was better than a bench. And it looked like I'd used an arm on it, and they were all perfect. And I wanted them to be a bit shit. And so we had to sort of introduce shitness into it to make it look like I'd pulled it on a motorbike. And in a way, part of it was just film it being done on a motorbike, because that's the only reason people would believe it. So then we did another version of it with a motorbike club that I'm a member of, and we printed some prints for them. And people just like, why the fuck are you doing it like that? And my response is like, well, why not? It's just fun. I wanted to do one where you could get a dog to pull a screen print. So you get a little sled, but you'd have to weigh it right down. But I think there's something quite funny about a dog pulling a screen print, or putting a screen print on this trampoline, but it wouldn't work because the ink would be vertical.
Imagine you're like this person who's gone to art school and everyone's always told you how great you are, and then your image is on the wall and everyone's like analyzing it, and then like the print that's done by a dog sells more than yours, and you're just like,
yeah. But that's
your ego is ruined.
Yeah, but that's there's something funny about that, because when you look at a print on the wall and you go, that's not that interesting. But then when somebody says it's been done by a dog, hold on a minute, that's fucking interesting. It's been done by a motorbike. How did he do that? Suddenly the technique overtakes the concept. And that's the thing I love playing with is, what's a good idea? What is a good idea? What's a good piece of music? When you look at David Bowie and the way that he used to write lyrics, you can either sit there and write poetry and then put it to music. The way he did it was he would just write all these words down, chop them up, and then stick the words together in a random format so that it was... Now, you can't turn around and say David Bowie's not a very good musician. He's a great musician, but how do you create impact through the tools at your disposal? And sometimes it's doing things that are wrong makes it right. Doing things that are stupid makes it clever. Doing things that are impossible makes it possible. Doing that, and then once you get into that routine of, hold on a second, I can do whatever the fuck I want. So suddenly, just doing stuff on paper is kind of a little bit lame. I mean, as an example, I looked at, you look at Robert Indiana when he did that brilliant Love piece. When you look at I Love New York, those are two of probably the most iconic graphic art. And I love stuff with words in it, because obviously I come from advertising, but I love stuff that has that. I love typography, I love words, and I love art. And those two pieces are just so symbolic of everything. If there was ever an image that would go love in the 20th century, Robert Indiana. If there was ever an image of New York, I Love New York. In that font, everything about it. Now I sat there and thought, well, fucking hell, every great artist has always done something with love. And I look at Ben Ine, and he did Robert Indiana, like Robert Indiana, but he did it with his font. And you look at every single artist has done that. And I sat there a couple of years ago thinking, I need to do a print that says love. Now, my thing is also that I don't want to do anything that Oliver Bonas is going to put in the shop. So if I do Live, Love, Laugh, I will kill myself on national television. Or on the
I think that is this is going to divide the audience, but fuck it. Do you know those little... basically, if you've got Live, Laugh, Love and you've chosen that for your own home decor, or those wooden signs that say home, I wouldn't be able to, I'd be able to go around your house for a meal, but I could never have a long...
But I'd want to go around there in the middle of the night and smash all the windows.
Yeah, there's
and so
nothing worse than
but it's interesting because I sort of sit there and go, well, I still want to, even cool people will still want to have a poster with love on it. They would want to have a version of live, love, laugh, but they don't want to have those words because that's a bit lame. So I sat there and thought, okay, what would I do? Because I remember when I did during the pandemic, when home, I've done a print with home on it, but I've done say
you haven't made it out of wood.
Yeah, so I did it on an old blueprint of a house, and it said "Home, sweet fucking home" because we were all locked in our houses. When I did the love one, I knew that I had a love print somewhere in me, but I didn't know what it was. And it all started by this fucking photograph that a friend of mine sent me of a flea market that we used to go to together. He went and sent me a picture of him going, "I'm here, you're not, you're a tosser." And in the background was a table, and on the floor next to the table was the tail end of a big bomb. And I remember saying to him, "Fucking hell, that looks cool. What's that?" And he went, "It looks like it's the tail end of a bomb." I said, "How big is it?" And he told me, and I got in touch. I got his phone, spoke to the bloke who owned it, I bought it off him. It got delivered here. Then I suddenly got this thought, I wonder what I can do with that. It looks really cool. What can I do with it? Then I thought, oh, I know what, I'm going to make a massive, I wonder what the top end of it looks like, the pointy bit with all the stuff in it. So I found that online, had this idea of, God, I'm going to make this massive freestanding bomb that'll stand on its legs, on its fins, and it'll just look really cool. Still didn't know what I was going to do with it. And then I thought, I know what, if I spray it gold and then put love on it, so it's a big love bomb. And there's something kind of interesting about finding old objects, whether they're maps or love letters or, ephemera, that suddenly I've taken a massive bomb and I've turned it, instead of being a kill bomb, it's a love bomb. And then try to work out how to do it. And of course, everything weighs a fuck of a lot because bombs are really heavy because they're metal and they're full of shit. Right. So it ended up being this thing that's now in this hotel in Enfield, and it looks fucking amazing. And it's, in a way, it's, I think, the best thing I've ever done, because it started off as a weird process. I could have done it as a print, which I did as well. But just had a bomb on it with love written on it. It's a print. But the fact that I've got it as a big actual bomb that weighs a ton, it looked fucking good. And then I did hand grenades as well that were all gold leaf and had love printed on them, and they look really fucking cool. And they're things that live beyond a print. It becomes an item. And that's something that I found really interesting, is that the minute you stop thinking with the restriction of paper, what else can I do? Then it becomes really interesting, because then it becomes about, well, I can do anything I want. And then suddenly you can see why Damien Hirst can sit there and go, if you've got the momentum, I just want to get a shark and put it in a tank full of formaldehyde. I wouldn't know how to do that.
Well, neither does Damien Hirst,
because he's Damien Hirst and he had momentum. He could sit there and say to somebody, "How do I do that?" And somebody will go off and work it out. Whereas we're not in that position. If you want to make, something, you have to work it out yourself. And I find that really satisfying. There's something really cool about, I don't want to do live, love, laugh. I want to do my version of love bomb or love. So I do love bomb, real bomb, love bomb hand grenades, love bomb prints. Good. I never have to do that again. I feel like I've done that.
Yeah.
And now I've got this obsession with inflatables. I want to do massive inflatables of north south. So have these letters huge, like 25, 30 foot high, like castles, and then take it down to a park in Peckham and just have south, and then take a really nice and then take north up to a park in Highgate or wherever it is, Tottenham, and do the same thing. And they become photographs. So suddenly it's like, is it art or is it photography? When Christo did all those things, when he covered desert islands in the middle of, the South Seas, and just put this beautiful pink fabric around an entire desert island, or wrapped the Triumph. It's an amazing thing, but it lives as a photograph as well as a piece that you see and in real life. And I just think that's really interesting as well.
Yeah. I think, I'm just trying to bring it back to people who are actually going to be like listening to us talking and stuff, and like they might be in a studio where they do have to do a lot of commission work that isn't what they want to be doing, but just keeps like the cash flow for the business and stuff. I keep trying to communicate that it's important to have your own little kind of outlet somewhere.
Yeah.
Just to be like, because you're probably in this profession as a printer or as like an artist or an advertiser or whatever, because you are artistic, and then that's just been stifled by like the need to make money.
Yeah.
did you ever have like an outlet when you were in advertising? Do you think it would have been like a good hobby for you to be able to like let off steam being a printer?
Yeah, constantly. I mean, I was making stuff from, my mum kept all my scrapbooks when I was a kid. When I worked in advertising, I used to make clocks. I used to get obsessed by finding old clock movements, and I'd just get interesting bits of wood and then chip out a little cube and put a face on it, and I'd make these clocks out of interesting bits of wood that I'd find on a beach or
cool.
So I was always making shit, but I loved that upcycling was the thing that is still with me. That's all I ever did. I remember I was obsessed with custom cars, and I used to buy model kits of Formula One cars, and then I'd keep tires and put the engine in the front rather than the back, and then cardboard make the body and make a custom car. So it was always taking a bit of something there and adapting it. I think with when you're someone's bitch, which effectively you are when you're working for somebody else and you're having to complete all the tick boxes, I think that there's something that you can try really hard at, which is, why would they code to me and not the three designers that's sitting on either side of me? Now, sometimes it might be because your colorways are better, or your design or your illustration style is better. But I think you can still put a little bit of your universe or your styling into stuff that you do for other people. So they come to you specifically. It's no different from when you've written a film script and you go, I really want to have Jake Gyllenhaal in it rather than someone else. Why would they pick Jake Gyllenhaal as opposed to anybody else? There'll be something about his personality. And I think he's still acting. He's still having to do a script that someone else has written, but they want him for a specific reason. And I think part of that is never losing your confidence or your soul enough to just do what other people want. Always make sure there's a little bit of you in it. So why would it be better to use you than anybody else? And I think sometimes that takes a little bit more work and it takes a little bit more discipline, but it means that, it helps your confidence, so that when they come to you and say, we'd really like you to do this. But as an example, I had somebody come to me at the end of the last year and say, we're part of Belgravia and we really want to use you to do Belgravia, is always a good idea. Now, normally, any other brand, they just fucking do it. They wouldn't even ask me. They just do it. And then I'd have a little piss. I'd fuck around with them on Instagram for a couple of weeks and it'd all be forgotten. But this lot actually said, we'd really like you to do it. And I think it's because they knew that I would fuck around with them if they did it without permission. So it was good. And when I did it, they said, we want to do a mural with Belgravia is always a good idea. And I go, okay, I can do that. It's kind of what you're asking me to do, something that I would have done anyway. So it's not too much of a challenge. Now, if they'd said to me, we want you to do, and I get it a lot with commissions when they come up and they say, we really want you to do this, but we want you to do it in green. And I go, mate, I don't do green. I do pink, red, white, gold. If you want green, go to somebody else. We want to print it on a picture of a photograph of somebody. I don't do that either. I do it on old things I found. So there's a guy that I'm doing a commission for who's got a pub. His daughter got in touch with me and said he's got a pub in Shoreditch. He really likes your work. Can you go in and talk to him? So he's like, I want to do it. There's a bit of wall that he wants to print on. So I said, I'll do a 3D print with drink beer, eat crisps, talk shit. And he goes, well, I can't do that because it says shit. I said, yeah, but you've got to be 18 to work. You've got to be 18 to be in a pub anyway. He says, no. So came out on another one. So right, I just said, I want to drink beer. I want to drink warm beer and eat crisps with you. So that's fine. That's part of what I would do. Anyway. And he says, I want to do another thing that's about the old king's head. And I said, well, who's the king on the pub? And he goes, well, it's not really any particular king. So I said, all right. So I've got an old, really badly painted picture of Elvis.
Right. Yeah, that's clever.
And so I'll put gold leaf. The old king's head is always a good idea. And it's just funny, but it's got my personality, but I'm still doing what he wants, which is he's got a print with the old king's head is always a good idea, but it's got my vibe to it. And then I sort of think, if you don't like it, fuck off somewhere else.
Yeah.
And part of it is having the confidence to sit there and go, look, maybe I'm not the right person for this. Be clear about what you want to do. Be clear about what you love doing. That will attract. We used to call it being a lighthouse brand. How do you stand for something? How do you become a little bit bigger than everybody else you're competing with so that people specifically want to work with you? And you'll get a lot of people who'll come to you and say, oh yeah, I really want you to do this thing for me. And you go, well, I can do that. Or if it's something you don't want to do, you just sit and go, well, it's not really what I do.
Yeah.
You need to find somebody else. And in fact, here's 3 other people that would probably be better at it than me.
That sounds like all my emails at the moment.
Yeah, but it takes a lot of guts. It takes a lot of confidence to do that. And but it also takes a lot of, I think there was a great saying I heard a long time ago, which was, the people you say no to will define you. The people you say yes to, fucking hell, I mean, that defines you, because you're just doing loads of shit for people you don't really like for not much money. The people you reject, you know, I remember having clients that come in and go, yeah, with Philip Morris, and you know that they would transform your business, but you've got to sell your ass to the devil, you know, and those values and that integrity that you did in that moment will absolutely define you, because they'll make you feel, at least I didn't sell out, I didn't do anything. And everyone's got a different level of sellout. You know, I've done things in the past for money that, you know, not that I'm ashamed of, but, you know, I would rather maybe not have done it. But sometimes needs must, and you've got to do it, and you learn from that. And so I think, you know, just putting that little bit of extra effort in to have a personality that's a little bit more than what they want, and then work out how to sell it to them. You know, they'll say, this is what we want. And then you go, all right, I've done what you want, but I've also done this, which I think is a little bit better and a little bit more interesting for these particular reasons. It's a bit more colorful, or it's got a little bit more personality, or it's a little bit whatever. And then as long as you take them through the process and you go, right, this is what you wanted, this is what I think you should buy, and there are 5 steps in between, you can have a conversation. Whereas if you just go, this is what we wanted, this is what I want to do, you're never going to meet in the middle. But also, likewise, if you say, this is what you wanted and this is what you've got, you're not grafted.
Yeah, no, I believe that.
And that's something that, again, with hindsight and a lot of experience in marketing and advertising, you have to do that. Every client will come to you knowing exactly what they want, because when they come to you from having worked with another agency, they want exactly what they wanted last year that the other agency didn't give them. And so you then have to go, okay, we can do that. But we can also, over the next 3 or 4 years, let's work as a relationship, and we'll work out how we can do stuff that's going to be even better for you. Now, that might mean rechange. As an example, there was a great story I heard, well, that happened to us. We got a phone call from Wrigley's one night, and they said, oh, would you be interested in doing our advertising? We're like, yeah, love to. And they said, all right, well, we'll send you through a fax. It was back in the 90s. And they went, we'll send you through a fax. And they sent through this fax, and they said, thanks for agreeing to talk to us. It's about a new TV campaign. And we're like, okay. And then they went, here are all the mandates. And then we got 4 pages of mandates. So number 1 was, it has to be a couple involved. So I don't know if you remember the old ad when it was like they're on the Greyhound bus, and it's a beautiful American couple, and they have one stick. It was before it was like little.
Oh yeah, and you
tore it, and she took a bit, and he took it. And then they meet at the end, and they kind of come together. And it was basically that story. That was the most successful ad they'd ever done for ages. And they were like, the ad agency couldn't do any more like that because it was just so formatted. And so they put it up for pitch and said, right, our other ad agency has just fallen off a cliff. Can you do it? But these are and so we're all like, yeah, great. Wrigley's could be really interesting. And then they go, and here's the 43 things that you have to put in every Wrigley's ad that is basically the previous ad that they just made. And it was like, it has to be a couple, they have to be on a journey, there has to be love, there has to be this, there has to be that. And the last thing was this thing that they said, there has to be what's called the front-loading appreciation shot. And we were like,
that's like the beginning of a...
Yeah. What the fuck is the front-loading appreciation shot? What is that? He says, oh, it's this bit at the end when they come together and they share a stick, they get a new stick each, and they put it on their teeth, and then they bend it on the teeth. Do you remember they used to push it in with one finger and it would bend on the teeth, and then they pop it in the mouth and chew it, and then go, that's amazing. Front-loading. So putting chewing gum in your mouth, some arsehole has gone, it's called a front-loading, rather than side-loading, which is when you put it in your ear, or back-loading, when you push it onto the back of your head.
Yeah.
And I was like, the fucking fact that they called it front-loading appreciation shot.
It's really creepy.
It's really creepy. But that's like, the fact that they called it that was every reason why we didn't want to do it. And I just thought, look, mate, you've got a list of 35 things that you've got to put in the ad. Why don't you just get anybody to shoot them for you in any order, and it'll be your ad?
Yeah.
Why do you want to work with an ad agency that wants to come up with a new idea? And so we rejected it. But it was kind of interesting that the minute you get into that thing where we could have made a lot of money just doing that dog shit ad, but it was better to say, fuck off. I don't want to waste my time and waste my emotional energy and do things that I don't want to do for too long, because you have to do that. Everybody has to do that for a lot of time every day. There has to be some sense, what are you doing that makes you feel really good and makes you feel special, makes you feel like you?
Do you think that's what happened to you? You had everyone's got like a jar of emotional energy, and it doesn't replenish all the way to the top, and you just burn through it through the advertising.
Yeah.
And then normally other people burn through it in like their whole career, but you burnt through it so fast because you had to deal with so much bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also, I'm an immigrant son. My mum's Danish and German. My dad's Italian. I'm born in London. I don't know whether I'm
Passionate
Italian,
people.
Danish. We're passionate, but also my dad's a restaurateur. My mum works in a shop. You know, I think we're all pleasers because you've got that terrifying thing of I'm new and I better look useful and better be nice and better look like I can help. Because if I don't, somebody might ask me to leave. And so the minute you're a pleaser, you just spend your whole time blowing smoke up people's arse. And then it just becomes this awful thing where you're thinking about them way more than you're thinking about yourself. It's an interesting analogy to sort of think like there's a jar of all the fucks that I give. And suddenly I just found myself one day with no more fucks. You know, I drank all of my coffee allowance in the 80s. I smoked all of my fags in the 80s. And so I don't do it anymore. And in a way, I kind of think exactly, you know, my empathy for strangers and my feeling and giving fucks for people I didn't really care about, I used it all up. Because I made lots and lots of people a fuck of a lot of money, not only employees, but clients with the work that I did. And I suddenly thought, fucking, what am I getting out of this? Well, just that nice warm feeling that I've helped a load of people out. Now, when you're a pleaser, it's what you like to do.
That feeds you.
You like to feed people. And then I sort of sat and thought, you know what? I'm done with being a fucking pleaser. I want to please myself. I want to love myself.
Yeah.
Because before I was so obsessed about everybody else. And I called it kind of positive selfish. The minute you sit there and go, what do I want to fucking do for once? I live in this world where I've got all these choices, but I'm miserable. What do I fucking want to do? What makes me feel good? And the minute you recognize that that's the situation, and it's a unique situation because, like I said, I was a pleaser, which is not a good place to be. But being in control of what you do and making yourself happy in order to make others happy is a much better place. Whereas I was I was quite happy to be absolutely miserable and make other people happy. But there's nothing good comes of that. You feel really dirty.
I'm glad you ran out of fucks.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Unfortunately, the jar I had with the fucks I had to give was enormous. It took me 35 years to get through.
A barrel.
Now I'm 58 and I'm getting all these other amazing fucks in that I can spend on myself. I don't know where we're going with this metaphor, but it's very true. It's very interesting.
I think I want to end there, Dave. I think we've got so much. I really hope someone watches it and it fast forwards or makes them reflect on what their own situation is and then just like lets them get out of it.
Yeah, and if I could add a sort of final point, I mean, I talk about it a lot, is, you know, you get 80 summers if you're lucky. And summers in this country are shit, apart from the one that we just had, but that's because we fucked it up.
Yeah.
And so there's a kind of, you know, we're all running out of time. And I just think, you know, you go through different periods of your life. In your teens, you're about having fun. In your 20s, you're about engaging. In your 30s, you're about building. In your 40s, you're about trying to fucking hold on to everything. And in your 50s, most of the time, you know, you're on the way out. In your 60s, you're falling apart. 70s, you're lucky. If you get to your 70s and you've still got all your bits working, good for you. But in your 80s, it's curtains. Someone's going to turn the lights off. And so when you get this kind of 50, fucking hell, in any other job,
it sounds like a horrible song.
It does. It's not. It's not
Craig David, but like not through the weeks,
really
but through
dark,
the decades.
Really dark. And so it's like just make sure you enjoy it. And I think, again, sort of getting back to the first thing that we talked about with the pandemic and the effect that that's had is think about what you fucking love doing. And if you love doing something and you're not doing it, have a think about why you're not doing it, and then think about how you can do it. And, you know, the pandemic taught us a lot of stuff, that you don't have to spend a lot of money. You don't have to be here. You've got internet access. Think about how you can shine as bright as possible by doing shit that's important to people, and then talk about the shit that you do and add value. And for me, it was a very, very personal journey, but, you know, I had a lot of experience in doing that sort of stuff, so it didn't come too hard. For a lot of people who are shy, a lot of people who don't feel confident about shooting their mouths off, you know, you've got to come to terms with that. But the more you do it and the more you find a vibe that suits you, I don't mind. I love shooting my mouth off and I love being stupid, and I don't mind making myself the butt of my own jokes. I don't like slagging people off. I don't like being on Twitter where it's all really angry. I like having a laugh and making fun of myself, and I'm cool with that. And that helps my brand, that I'm the happy-go-lucky idiot that just tries to make fun stuff. And that's absolutely the brand I like. Work out what you like, and then work out how you can turn that into something you love doing, because there is genuinely nothing better than getting up in the morning knowing that the only thing you're going to be doing is something that you, one, find really easy, and two, fucking love more than anything else you've ever done. When you get to make something with your hands and your brain and an idea, and you create something that when people see it on the wall or they see it in a space that they go, God, that's fucking great, I must have that. It's the most amazing thing you can ever do. And there's no shame involved. I know that in England we love to sort of think, oh, the artist must suffer and we shouldn't be making money, and if you make money you're a sellout. That's a load of shit. You work your ass off, you come up with something really interesting. If you did it as a product, if you're the bloke or girl that invented cat's eyes, good for you. You've made the world a better place and you can make a shitload of money at it. That's the way you got to think of it. If you're making it better, you deserve every penny you get. If you're a musician and you make a great song that makes lots of people dance, or makes lots of people cry at funerals, or makes people excited at weddings, good for you. You've done something. Populism is not a bad thing. Find out what you love, make sure you fucking do it, and let it run the fuck over you. I mean, that brilliant Bukowski quote of find what you love and then let it kill you is absolutely right. And you get it right, and there's a very simple there's a process, and I'm actually writing I've written a presentation which is how to turn your side hustle, and I hate that word, but how to turn your
but everyone uses it and
into your career.
It.
It's a shorthand, but how to turn your side hustle into your career. And pretty much exactly what we've talked about here. There are like 5 or 6 steps that I went through, and it might not apply to a lot of people, but it might apply to some. And it's a simple formula. I mean, it's just, even that great Arnold Schwarzenegger thing of early to bed, early to rise, work really hard and advertise. I mean, it's,
why have I not had that one before? That's funny.
There's a brilliant thing that he does on YouTube when he talks about how he broke down his day, 24-hour day, to try and do 4 jobs. And you'd say, right, I'd sleep for 4 hours, and then I'd go to the gym for 4 hours, and then I'd work in for 6 hours, and then and it was like science. And one guy said to him, yeah, but I haven't got enough time. And his response was, sleep faster. And you sort of go, yeah, that's the way of looking at it, is if you're serious about it and you want to make it, don't forget, this is the fucking best job you will ever have. It'll be the best way you will spend your life. And if it's an Oliver Bonas quote, living your best life, how can you live your best life? Fucking work at it. Work it out. Work out how you get there. Use all that information that you've got. But you fucking got a graft. And then when you unlock it, you're sitting there carving a key. And then once you put that key in the lock and it works, and you're in the beautiful land of wherever the fuck you want to be, it's amazing. Because then every step is just brilliant and makes you better. And everything you do just makes you happier and better as a person and more confident as an artist, or whatever it is you want to be. But a lot of it is that snapping out of that inertia that we're all trapped in a lot of the time, snapping out of that imposter syndrome, finding that confidence, doing stuff, surrounding yourself with people who are positive and going to make your life better, and then fucking work. And then it's not even work.
I know.
Well, you're doing something.
It doesn't feel like work when you're
like sitting behind a desk in a bank where you've got to work for some fucker who's going to make your life difficult. You're doing stuff that's great. I mean, I'm in here from 8:30 in the morning till 9 o'clock at night, most nights, because I can't think of anything else I'd rather do. And I love it.
Yeah.
Even sticking thousands of sequins onto a big lump of wood that I can't even work out how to get out of my studio.
I don't want this for you, but I kind of think like next time I go on your Instagram or something, there's going to be like half of them, because you're just going to fucking rage on it.
I can only do it for about 10 minutes because it's so fiddly, and I've got to do it with I've got little pterodactyl arms, and my fingers are really fat and big. Wear gloves because you're not allowed, don't want to get fingerprints all over them. And it's like trying to separate all the discs because they're all stuck. It's fucking does my head. I can only do like 5 minutes at a time and then have to run around. And
I think it'd probably sell more if it was fucked up halfway, and then it'd be like a story.
I've also got shitloads of extras because I didn't measure it correctly. So I've got thousands more sequins. So I'm going to be doing other stuff with it, but I don't know. I mean, it just drives me mad. But that's the brilliant thing. It's like, I would still rather be doing this and driving myself mad than working with a bunch of arseholes sex pests, money grabbing, corrupt fuckers, and I have a real laugh.
Yeah, cool. I really appreciate your time, and this is
Pleasure.
one of the
Thank you.
best episodes.
Good luck with it. Good luck with everything.